Hello there, my lovelies. How are we doing? My name's Boomy and you're watching my channel, Boomy Reactions. Now today, guys, we're going to be catching back up with Jacked history again. So we're in for a history-related video. One of my favourites. So this video, I'm very excited to say, this is all about one of my most admired figures in history. So today's video is all about the Celtic Queen, Boudica, also known as Boudica, although I think both of those names refer to the same person, but I think one is more of a medieval term that came much later. Anyway, Boudica. So yes, Boudica was queen of the Iceni tribe in Britain, just shortly after the Roman invasion. Her husband was king of the Iceni. He died. He left his lands to Boudica and everything in his will. No, he didn't. He left it to the Roman Empire, hoping to keep them safe. So they were on like good terms with the Romans. It didn't work, and famously, Boudica's inherited lands were annexed by the Romans. She was flogged, and worse happened to her daughters. It's absolutely awful what they did to her. In her anger and in her rebellion, she created this amazing rebellion against the Roman army. It was absolutely legendary. And as a child, learning history in school, as a little girl, you don't really hear of an awful lot of empowering female figures throughout history, and this was absolutely one of them. She's absolutely amazing. So, we need more characters like this. But, history does tend to leave out the extraordinary women. And they do tend to be quite few and far between in regard to the history books anyway. So this was always one of my favourite stories growing up, learning about history. So I'm thrilled to be watching this video, especially from Jacked history, because I love watching his videos. I love his outbursts, his rants. He's so funny. So this video has been requested by one of my lovely patrons. So this is from Dr. Mobius. So Dr. Mobius, you say, "Hey Boomy, just wanted to drop this just to watch you have a good laugh and see your thoughts on this." I would absolutely love to, Dr. Mobius. Thank you so much for requesting this, my lovely. I'm hoping Jack is going to appreciate how much of an extraordinary woman this is. Because if not, Jack, we're going to have a fallout. It's one of my favorite stories. So anyway, guys, I've done an awful lot of, I was going to say mansplaining. If you haven't heard the story of Boudica, it's a brilliant story. That act of rebellion. It's a real underdog story. So she managed to get neighbouring tribes in alliance with her, and I think they had a 100,000 odd strong army of Celts marching against the cities that Rome had occupied. I'm trying to think what cities. So they were based like Norfolk, kind of East England kind of area. And they marched on Colchester, St. Albans. And I think they were on their way. They were making their way down to London, where they were ultimately defeated. But they were very much a thorn in the Roman army's side. They caused an awful lot of chaos. Power to them. So yes, let's crack on with the video so I don't take up any more time blabbing on. You know what I'm like. And guys, if you're enjoying these reactions, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much, my lovelies. If you're interested, I have a Buy Me a Coffee account. That link is over here. And if you would like to help support my channel any further, I have a Patreon account. And if you want to check that out at all, that link is in the description just below there.
My name is Jack Mandeville, and this is Jacked History. I did a poll on my YouTube a few weeks ago to prioritize which episodes I should write and film first.
Boudica!
The winner was last week's episode about Aussies in Vietnam.
Oh.
Thanks for watching that, by the way. And the second, today's episode, was about the Celtic Warrior Queen, Boudica.
Yes.
And I'll be honest with you, I was a little surprised it ranked that high. I've done a couple of episodes about badass ladies in the past, and they've bombed. I know I have a male-heavy audience, so I was beginning to think you guys didn't like the ladies. But you went and voted Boudica second.
Let's have a shout out to the amazing, extraordinary ladies throughout history. I know. But let's face it, women get very overshadowed by male figures. And if we think about the roles and responsibilities of women over the years in different, and what they look like in different cultures and societies, it's not surprising why, they are quite male heavy, because I think, unfortunately, that's the reality of it. But then I do think when there are few and far between, a few handful of these amazing female empowerment figures, they really should be celebrated, because, like I said, as a young girl with an interest in history, you do very much get the impression that a lot of history is a bit of a sausage fest. But I do think it's important for young girls to be able to have these amazing examples of female leadership and empowerment, and it really is important. So I do think when there are a few that are documented and mentioned in history books, they should be talked about. They really should.
Second on this poll, and totally redeemed yourselves. You guys are amazing. You guys are amazing to women. You love your mothers, your sisters, your wives, your daughters. And if you don't have a wife yet, don't worry. You're going to make a great husband and father one day.
I'm sure.
Because you love women. Also, before I proceed, I'm borderline tempted to make future episodes entirely about Australia and New Zealand history based off my last episode's performance. Because you Aussie, oi folks are some of the most positive comment leavers I've ever seen in my life. Must be something in the Vegemite. I'm not sure, but I'm here for it. Today's episode...
I just can't. I'm sorry, Vegemite's horrible.
is a unique one because we don't know that much about Boudica.
That lady representing Boudica is a gorgeous, model-esque woman here who is absolutely stunning. I think Boudica was a little bit older, maybe a little bit weather-worn, but I think she was an older lady than this gorgeous person here.
So sifting fact versus fiction can be tricky. Here's a couple of things we know for sure, though. She definitely was real, and she definitely caused headaches to the invading Roman army. The tricky thing about Boudica is that almost everything we know about her comes from Roman writers, mainly Tacitus and Cassius Dio.
So they're gonna be biased. They're gonna try and discredit her to some extent. I don't think an awful lot of their accounts the vast majority of them aren't going to be very truthful. If we think about the agenda behind why they would want to discredit her and what they would stand to gain,
And neither of them actually witnessed the revolt firsthand.
And that as well,
Tacitus was closer in time, about 4 years old when it happened, and may have had access to people whose families experienced it.
So even then, they're hearing the stories retold as like battle stories, as legends, and they're probably from people who very much wanted to discredit her and not have any form of admiration for what she managed to achieve, because to a Roman, that wouldn't seem like an achievement. That would seem like rebellion, open rebellion, like, criminal acts. And
while Dio wrote much later and loved dramatic storytelling. So historians separate Boudica into two categories: pretty solid and probably Roman embellishment. Here's what we're fairly confident about. Number one, Boudica was a real historical person. There's no serious doubt about that. Multiple Roman sources discuss her revolt, and archaeology backs up the destruction associated with it. Number two, she was connected to the Iceni tribe. The Iceni lived in what is now eastern England, mainly Norfolk area.
Norfolk.
Her husband was King Prasutagus, a client ruler allied with Rome. Number three, the revolt happened around 60 AD.
I love that he's got himself as Prasutagus. Picking his nose. I think he just likes the idea of having a wife that looks like that Boudica model-esque woman before.
This timeline is widely accepted because it lines up with the Roman governorship of Gaius Suetonius Paulinus and archaeological burn layers in Roman towns. Number 4, shut the door. The Romans badly mistreated the Iceni leadership. Tacitus says that after Prasutagus died, Roman officials ignored his will, annexed Iceni territory, flogged Boudica publicly, and assaulted her daughters.
Yes. I think it's an established truth that what they did to her daughters, barbaric, disgusting. Just no. I don't even think that's an actual. Well, I was going to say I don't think that's an actual Roman punishment, but you never know. They were capable of weird, all sorts of things. Yeah, I can't remember what his will actually said. Whether it was that he was giving his lands and everything that he owned to Rome to protect his family, or whether it was that they inherited all of his lands, his title, his leadership, and blah, 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 and Rome took it anyway. I can't remember.
Historians debate details.
They were in the wrong anyway.
Most agree some kind of severe Roman abuse triggered the uprising.
Yeah.
By the way, sorry for the bleep there. This platform doesn't want me to use words that express negative human actions because the AI software is unable to distinguish tone, intent, and context. So it can't tell the difference between a historical channel talking about bad things that happened almost 2,000 years ago and Bill Cosby talking about his favorite pastime.
Yes. It definitely did happen though. I think there's records of the punishment actually taking place, the flogging and the rape, because that is what it was. I don't think it should be censored. That's actually what happened. It's fact.
Number 5, learn how to jive. Major Roman settlements were destroyed. This is one of the most archaeologically secure parts of the story. The revolt destroyed many parts of modern-day England. Archaeologists have found thick burn destruction layers from that exact period. In London especially, there's a famous red-black Boudican destruction horizon in the soil. Number 6, pick up sticks. The rebellion caused massive casualties. The revolt absolutely killed a huge number of Romans and Roman-aligned Britons. Ancient figures may be inflated, but this was a catastrophic uprising for Roman Britain. Number 7, go to heaven. Rome ultimately won. The governor regrouped the Roman army and defeated Boudica somewhere in the English Midlands.
Yeah, they annihilated them. But I think they had some good victories, at least 2 good victories on the run-up, but ultimately, you know, the Roman army, it's a huge, organized army. You can't, but yeah, they did defeat the Celtic uprising. I'm not going to say just the Iceni because that's Boudica's tribe, but they had other tribes as well.
Though the exact battlefield location is still unknown to this day. Number 8, I'm feeling great. Boudica died shortly afterward. Yeah. Ancient accounts agree she did not survive long after the defeat.
She was wounded.
Tacitus says she poisoned herself. Dio suggests illness. Either way, her revolt ended there.
I don't think, if you try and build up a bit of a character profile from what you can establish about Boudica, it doesn't seem fitting in with her character that she would poison herself. Unless anything happened to her daughters. I don't believe that. I think that she was wounded in the battle.
Those are what we think
illness.
Are the facts, or what we think we know are the facts. But the myth around Boudica? Oh boy, let's jump into that. Boudica has one of those careers that gets better every time somebody retells it. The real woman was an Iron Age queen who led massive revolts against the Romans, as I've said earlier. But the legendary version became something closer to Britain's answer to a Celtic Valkyrie. Guys like Tacitus gave her movie villain levels of drama. She was supposedly towering over everyone around her, had wild red hair hanging to her waist, eyes that could melt iron, and delivered thunderous speeches that fired up hundreds of thousands of warriors. The problem is that those speeches were almost certainly invented by Roman historians. The army numbers were probably exaggerated, and even her exact appearance is impossible to verify. During the Victorian era, when the British Empire liked comparing itself to Rome, while also celebrating its own ancient roots, Boudica was reinvented as the fearless mother of the nation. The famous statue of her charging into battle beside her daughters in a war chariot helped lock that image into popular culture, even though historians debate how much of that iconic scene reflects reality and how much reflects 19th century romanticism.
Yeah, but why would a Celtic Iron Age queen be riding a very Roman-looking chariot? She's fighting the Romans. I get it. There's some things that you can kind of say were probably true, like the big mane of wild red hair is quite a popular one that's retold from a few kind of accounts. And given that red hair is quite a popular Celtic trait, that one is probably true. And she probably would have had long hair as a woman at the time. I don't think she would have been dressed like that kind of statue. Although I think, if I remember, the Iceni tribe, they did enjoy a lot of Roman luxuries that maybe a lot of other tribes didn't enjoy because they weren't as close. They didn't, they weren't as civilized by Rome. But I think the Iceni did cooperate an awful lot under Roman rule. So maybe they would have been more akin to like a Roman aristocracy. You know what I mean? Wearing the toga.
Queen Victoria was queen at the time. She was in the middle of a long reign, and it didn't hurt to prop up an ancient British Celtic heroine when you had a woman running the largest empire in the world at the time, Peter. When you think about it, it was a good psyops move, good propaganda. Today,
I mean, if she was a history buff, it was probably one of the few female characters in leadership roles that you would naturally be empowered by and you would look to for example or inspiration. Like I said, she's one of my favorites. And as a young girl, you look to the female figures because there's not very many of them in history.
Boudica is less a historical figure and more a blank canvas that every generation paints differently. Yeah. To some, she's an anti-imperialist freedom fighter standing up to a foreign occupier. To others, she's an early symbol of female leadership and resistance in a male-dominated world. British folklore has embraced her because her story hits all the right notes. A wronged queen, a brutal empire, a desperate rebellion, and a last stand that ends in tragedy. Legends have even claimed she was a military genius who nearly destroyed Rome's hold on Britain single-handedly, that all the tribes of Britain united behind her banner, or that she was some kind of proto-nationalist fighting for a country called Britain centuries before such an idea even existed. The truth is messier. Many tribes stayed out of the revolt. Nobody knows exactly where her final battle happened, and she probably thought in terms of her own people rather than a united nation. But myths don't survive because they're tidy. They survive because a red-haired warrior queen taking on the most powerful empire on earth is the kind of story people have wanted to believe for almost 2,000 years. I'll never forget the first time I learned about Boudica. It was when I moved to Austin, Texas in 2008, when I was 10 years old, because I'm currently 28 years old, and met my first Austin woman. Oh, you don't know about Austin women? They're definitely packing crystals and whatnot somewhere on their body, and there's a good chance she knows a lot about Boudica from the women's empowerment class she took at the University of Texas before she dropped out her sophomore year. She's quick to tell you all about who you are as a person after the first time meeting, once, she pries from you what your zodiac sign is. And somewhere in the conversation, you make a funny joke about that one time your dad yelled at you when you were a kid for something stupid you did, so she needs to let you know how much unprocessed trauma you have in your life, and she just keeps talking about how much of the trauma that she's faced and overcame. She's got a latitude and longitude address tattooed on her wrist of whatever ayahuasca retreat she went to in Peru 2 years ago, because of her trauma. She seems to have a lot of money, too.
Okay, I'm getting it.
Like a lot. She has a nice place in town and drives a nice car, but you get a really vague understanding of what her actual income source is because she never seems to be working. She mostly just goes to bars and wellness retreats, which is where she met every single one of the 8 boyfriends she's had in the last 3 years, who are all coincidentally narcissists, which caused her a lot of trauma. Then you start asking about her upbringing, and
it's like the hot word at the minute, isn't it? Narcissist. It's everyone's favorite term.
And it turns out her dad owns a shitload of industrial buildings in San Diego.
Okay.
So, okay, you know where the money is coming from now, but now you're asking yourself, who the hell leaves wealth in San Diego for Austin? She isn't into guns or barbecue because she can't own a gun due to a restraining order against her from one of her narcissistic exes. And she's currently on her 4th stint with veganism. So barbecue is out of the picture. So why would you choose to come to Austin? Either way, she's telling you all about that stuff when her phone rings.
I think Jack has had a lot to do with these kind of women, so he can kind of profile them now.
Sage, her boyfriend, he's in a band, bassist and sometimes drums. The band almost got to open for the Lumineers last month. Sage works at his brother's art store Monday through Wednesday from noon to 4 p.m. She doesn't pick up the phone for Sage because they're in a fight, because last night when she asked him if it would be okay for her to spend a weekend meeting her friend Clint in Nashville, Sage said no. That response really triggered her trauma from her previous narcissistic exes. Sage needs to understand that she only had one threesome with Clint, and that was like 6 years ago,
dude. Didn't mean anything.
Sage can't be insecure if he wants to stay with her. You know what I'm talking about. Austin women, they love Boudica because Boudica also did something about her trauma, like kill thousands of Roman soldiers in revenge of her daughters.
Yeah, she had actual
and burn
trauma.
every city in the southern Britain area to the ground. Boudica didn't take shit from the Romans, and she's not gonna take shit from Sage, the narcissistic abuser. So when I give you the rundown of the events that transpired in her life, it's going to be a mix of mythology and deduced truths with a sprinkling of some hardcore evidence in there. We have to start with the native Celts of the island. The Iceni of 60 AD weren't some band of woad-painted lunatics hiding in the woods waiting to pounce on the Romans. They were a wealthy kingdom in modern England, complete with kings, nobles, trade networks, and enough coinage to prove they knew how money worked. For years, their relationship with the Roman Empire was actually pretty practical. Their king, Prasutagus, ruled as a client monarch, meaning he kept his throne as long as he played nice with Rome and paid the political bills.
Yeah, so they kind of cooperated with the invasion. They didn't cause too much trouble for Rome. You know, as long as they did what they were told, and it was okay for a while. I think there were quite a few tribes that kind of, not negotiated, but they kind of cooperated like this. And as such, you know, there's peace. And you enjoy the benefits of the trade with Rome. You know, your wives enjoy the nice, pretty dresses and, you know, the nice fragrances. And you get the imported food that comes over. I think it carried on like that for a while.
We are for the money.
It was the ancient version of being told, you're independent,
but
as long as
really.
you do exactly what we say.
Yes.
But when Prasutagus died around 60 AD, Roman officials tossed diplomacy out of the window, like real fast. They moved to absorb the Iceni kingdom outright and allegedly humiliated his family in the process, proving once again that empires have an incredible talent for creating their own worst enemies. For the Romans, nearly a century before Boudica ever picked up the banner of rebellion, Rome had been trying to figure out what to do with Britain. Julius Caesar made 2 flashy expeditions in 55 and 54 BC, but they were basically the ancient version of a guy kicking in the front door, taking a look around, and leaving before the neighbors showed up to call the cops. I recently did an episode on that fella. Check it out, or I'm going to invade Peter's ass. You like that? You like that?
Oh.
Like that, Peter? The real conquest began in 43 AD, when Emperor Claudius sent tens of thousands of legionnaires across the English Channel to turn Britain into another Roman province. The Romans didn't just conquer with swords, they built roads, forts, temples, and an entire set of cities while cutting deals with local kings who agreed to play by Roman rules. Some tribes fought, some cooperated, and many did a little of both depending on who was winning that week. Client kingdoms like the Iceni were allowed to keep their rulers as long as taxes got paid and nobody caused trouble. It was a system that mixed military muscle with political bribery, and for almost 20 years it worked brilliantly. But Rome had a habit of confusing obedience with loyalty, and by 60 AD, its governors had become so greedy and heavy-handed that they were about to learn a very expensive lesson. Britain was conquered, but it was far from tame. Peter, do you think the whole bad teeth stereotype with modern English people, do you think it comes from their Roman roots or their Celtic roots? Answer me. When pursued...
I think the noses might be more Roman related than maybe the teeth of the Celtic roots.
Augustus grew old, according to Tacitus. He left his kingdom jointly to his daughters and the Emperor Nero, hoping Rome would respect his family and avoid a takeover. The moment Persuticus died, Roman officials treated his will like junk mail and moved to annex the entire kingdom. Roman authorities seized Iceni lands, wealthy families had their estates confiscated, and creditors reportedly came demanding immediate repayment of loans.
There's this horrible kind of arrogance that kind of follows Rome around, in that the general idea is that they're quite superior to the places that they go and conquer, and in their head they believe they're civilizing these places, letting them keep a handful of customs and maybe a religion. Yeah, okay, fine, as long as you cooperate and you pay tax and you ultimately give us the final say, and you do as Rome say. But yeah, that arrogance of, what is this? This is a will? Well, this is nothing like what we do, so this is as useful as toilet paper. So it's just an example of that arrogance as well. And I think a lot of the like the higher ups, like the commanders, there was a lot of cruelty. I think they just generally were left to their own devices to do what they wanted in these regions where Rome had conquered, and they were cruel. They had weird interests and sexual appetites and weird punishments. Just weird.
Tacitus claims Boudica herself was publicly flogged, while her daughters, like I said earlier, were sexually assaulted, an act that may have been intended to humiliate the entire Iceni royal line.
Well, I don't think it was just sexually assaulted. They were raped publicly by however many Roman soldiers desired to rape them, basically. It wasn't just a sexual assault. Let's call it what it is. It was rape.
As much as the family itself. Some of the details are debated by historians, but there is little doubt that Rome's occupation was brutal, and the local elites suddenly realized they were next on the chopping block.
That you're no exception. Your money, your wealth, at the end of the day, if you're under this kind of dictatorship, if you're under this rule, you are just as subject to it, no matter what standing you have, what your social class is. This is what Roman rule looks like.
Sometime after the seizure of her kingdom, Boudica emerged as the rallying point for not only the Iceni, but neighboring tribes, who had plenty of reasons to hate Rome themselves. Ancient writers claim she rode before her followers in a chariot, with her daughters beside her, calling on the Britons to fight for their freedom and avenge the wrongs done to their people. The speeches themselves were almost certainly written by Roman historians, but the effect was real enough.
I was going to say, it doesn't, maybe the words have been recorded in a very Romanesque kind of way. So it's up for debate what the words actually were, but the power of the words is still the same. She still managed to convince tribes that probably were quite patriarchal and male-led. She still managed to convince other neighboring tribes to follow her, not just to join, to follow her into a battle against the oppression of Rome.
Tribal rivalries were set aside, old grudges were forgotten, and thousands of warriors answered the call. Rome had spent almost 20 years convincing Britain that resistance was hopeless. Boudica spent a few weeks proving that was very much up for debate. Jesus Christ. This story is basically Braveheart with a ginger queen. And they're both generally true. That's the crazy part. Timing was also on her side. The Roman governor was campaigning far away in western Britain, leaving much of the province lightly defended. Boudica moved fast and hit hard, leading what was less a conventional army and more a tidal wave of angry tribes determined to tear down the symbols of Roman rule.
I think it's worth mentioning as well that this chaos, this devastation that she managed to cause in such a short space of time, I think she had a very good, like a very tactful mind, like the mind of a military tactician. I don't know how much of that she'd maybe acquired or learned from her husband, maybe, because I don't think this is generally something that's taught to most queens. So I think it goes beyond the realm of common sense, like how she was attacking and what she was doing. So unless she had support from maybe other leaders from more war-inclined tribes, you know?
This wasn't just about reclaiming a throne anymore. It was about burning the entire system to the ground. For a brief moment,
breaking the wheel.
The unstoppable Roman Empire looked surprisingly stoppable. And somewhere in Londinium, which is where modern-day London is based, there was probably a Roman tax collector realizing that maybe publicly humiliating the local warrior queen had not been the political strategy he thought it was. It's got to be frustrating to have leaders make knee-jerk decisions and not think things through when it comes to foreign relations. I wouldn't know about that personally. I've never seen it in my lifetime. I'm an American. Her warriors descended on where modern Colchester is, a Roman colony packed with retired legionnaires who had spent years reminding the locals who was in charge. The city was overwhelmed, and its great temple became a desperate last stand that held out for only a couple of days before falling. While the Roman governor was campaigning far away against the Druids on the island of Mona in modern Wales, news of the revolt spread like wildfire. Boudica seized the opportunity and marched south. Londinium, still a young but booming trading town, was abandoned because the governor knew he could not gather enough troops to defend it in time. The people left behind paid the price as the settlement was burned to the ground. Not long after, another Roman city met the same fate. In the span of perhaps only a few weeks, 3 of Roman Britain's most important settlements had been destroyed. Roman writers claimed as many as 70,000 to 80,000 Romans and their allies were killed. And while those numbers are probably exaggerated, there is no doubt that Boudica had brought nearly 20 years of Roman rule to the brink of collapse in a remarkably short amount of time. But Rome didn't become the biggest empire on earth by panicking. As Boudica's forces rampaged across the province, the governor spent those same weeks racing east, gathering every soldier he could find. Many Roman units had been destroyed or were too far away to help, leaving him with only around 10,000 disciplined legionnaires and auxiliaries to save the province. Rather than chase Boudica, which is what she wanted, he carefully chose the battlefield, likely somewhere along Watling Street, though nobody knows the exact location. He positioned his men in the woods where they were protected, forcing Boudica's much larger army to attack head-on where Roman shields, armor, and brutal discipline gave them every advantage. And according to the accounts, Boudica's followers had even brought wagons carrying their families to watch what they expected would be the final victory, accidentally creating a barrier that blocked their own retreat when the battle turned against them. After weeks of almost uninterrupted rampaging, the rebellion came crashing down in a single day. The Romans advanced in formation, cut through the Celtic Britons, and transformed a revolt that had nearly driven them out of Britain into a slaughter. Tacitus claims Boudica escaped and took poison rather than be captured, while another ancient writer suggested she died from illness. But either way, her story ended there. The woman who had spent a few furious weeks bringing the Roman Empire to its knees became a legend for the next 2,000 years, and Rome learned a lesson it never completely forgot. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. If you what I'm doing here, please like, share, hit that notification button, subscribe, and tell your friends about Jacked History. And as always, you can see exclusive episodes of this show on Pepperbox TV, along with my cooking show, Palates of the Past, with my co-host, Caleb W. Francis. All right, Peter, let's go rampage around Britain for funsies.
Yeah. It's a great story. It's trying to decipher like which parts of it have been romanticized, um, which are factual, which actually happened, or which are most likely to have happened. You know what I mean? It's tricky because it happened so long ago, and there's been so many different recollections of the story, and you've got to question what's their agenda when they're recording things in a certain way, and typical history problems. But I, for one, maybe I was saying this more because I'm female. I am drawn to the few figures of female figures throughout history that have really had an impact throughout history. Yeah, of course you're drawn to them. Of course you are. Boudica is absolutely one of my favourite stories. So yeah, I think it's very unfair what happened to her, arguably because she was a woman, and her daughters. Their punishment was just because they were female. It's awful, and they were denied inheriting what her husband had left behind. Arguably, maybe that was because she was a woman. Maybe it wasn't anything to do with that. Maybe Rome just felt the need to take the lands. But something tells me if Boudica had had a son, there wouldn't have been any issue with him inheriting. So it does go to stand as, it's a story of female oppression, particularly just because they were female. But yes, I thoroughly enjoy the story of Boudica. Absolutely. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed watching along with me, and thank you for requesting this, Dr. Mobius. Another absolute banger. Thank you, my lovely. Guys, take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.